Focus on Gambia. It's a political program that we always bring politicians to talk about what is happening in Gambia and to get some good news or give some view from your end to the public. That's the whole idea of this program.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very familiar with the voice since I'm a contributor to a newspaper, but this is the first time appearing on the on this broadcast.
Mr. Gajigo, we first of all start with the economy of the Gambia, especially when you look at the ministry and the central bank of the Gambia. Now, in the Gambia, all currency, even the least currency, is more valued than the dollars. Do you think really we are making a headway?
No, I mean the currency normally by itself, the exchange rate doesn't tell you much, but it's the movement of the exchange rate and the underlying fundamental economic forces that tell you. I mean, I was just looking at what the exchange rate was in the Gambia in 2016. It was pretty much about in the low 40s. So it means over the past 10 years, the currency of the Gambia lost 75% of its value across all major currencies. This means the CFA, the British pound, the euro, the US dollar, and pretty much every other currency. So our currency has been going in one particular direction consistently, which is down in terms of its value. And that can be explained very easily in the case of the Gambia. There are a few things that determine your exchange rate. This is, what value do foreigners have in what you produce? So Gambia is a country where we run a massive trade deficit, which means we export very little because foreigners value very little of what we produce, but we import a lot. In fact, our imports are at least 3 times the value of our exports. So constantly, there is no demand for our currency while we have a massive demand for foreign currency. So this has a negative effect on the value of the exchange rate. Another factor is the following: we do not have very high foreign direct investment, because that's also one of the reasons how you can have your currency can be appreciated due to demand by foreign investors coming into the economy. We have very little of that. The only thing that is preventing our dollar from completely collapsing is the remittances that Gambian diaspora are sending in. So right now, so fundamentally, if you want to look at some basic indicators of how the economy is doing, things like the direction in which the currency is going and the inflation. And by the way, these two things are tied. But to answer your question, and I'm glad you went straight to the issue of the value of the dollar, how it is constantly depreciating. As I said, over the past 10 years, it lost 75% of its value. And that is a reflection of the fact that our economy is not producing goods and services that can be exported. Our economy is not attractive enough to investors to allow them to come in. And this exchange rate is reflecting that fundamental problem that our economy has.
Okay, when you look at these factors also, we have almost a country that is less than 3 million people. We have almost about 13 commercial banks. Now we have microfinance institution that is growing, and somebody has turned to be issuing corporate check now. They are not doing just microfinance like saving and withdraw, but now they are even accepting corporate check from companies and institutions. Then we have the forest bureau from Banjul up to Queen, and everywhere is forest bureau. Everybody doing their own thing. What do you think that from that angle affecting the economy of the Gambia?
Let me start with the easiest one. The proliferation of forest bureaus is actually not a problem. The Gambia has a huge diaspora population, and what's really sustaining the economy is roughly $1 billion per annum minimum that is coming in as remittances, and that remittances has to be processed through all of these forex bureaus and these transfer bureaus. So their presence is a reflection of economic need for them. I mean, if there isn't any need for them, they wouldn't be there. And their presence, forex bureaus by themselves do not determine the exchange rate. They have no effect on the exchange rate. Yeah, you can have 1 million forex bureaus. If they don't have currency to trade, they won't be there. So they don't have an effect. On the other hand, commercial banks, that one is an interesting issue. that is a reflection of a bigger problem. Here is the problem. Generally having banks in your country is good to the extent that they are performing their financial intermediation roles. The role of the banks is to help to take money from savers, make it available for investors who can invest it in the economy. That financial intermediation is very essential for economic development. The problem we have in the Gambia is that the vast majority of the assets of the commercial banks is through government treasury bills and bonds, which means that the reason why we have this large number of commercial banks is because of excessive government borrowing. The government is borrowing too much, it is increasing the debt, and commercial banks, instead of lending money to individuals and businesses at affordable interest rates, they can easily survive by just buying government treasury bills and T-bills. If you didn't have commercial banks, living off of government T-bills and bonds, you would only need 5 commercial banks because the market is not large enough. Compare Gambia with Sierra Leone and Liberia. These economies are, slightly bigger than the Gambia, but Liberia doesn't have more than 6 banks. The same thing with Sierra Leone. Nigeria may have up to 40 banks, but its population is more than 100 times the population here. So on per capita basis, Gambia has very high number of commercial banks. But the problem can be traced back to the excessive debt, especially local debt that our government is borrowing. And the problem with this is following. As more commercial banks go and buy treasury bills and bonds, they have less money to lend to individual small businesses, which is why, despite the high presence of commercial banks here, the level of credit to the private sector is one of the lowest in Africa.
When you look at price control, the Minister of Trade said recently that Gambia didn't have any intention to, put price control in the market. And that's one of the biggest challenges. Everybody is doing what they're doing. You get to the supermarket today, you see this, and the Ministry of Trade and both the Ministry of Health, they are not even helping the Gambian, like controlling some of these things. You go to some supermarket, they will even erase the expired date of the goods, and you see it, and they are giving it to Gambia, and the price is not controlled, and everybody is doing what they want to do. So what is your take?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things. Price, again, I'm glad you are going straight to some indicators that are very important. Because, exchange rate is a form of a price. But the most important price, prices that consumers face. And whether this is going up or down is reflected in the inflation rate. One thing we do know, despite what the government says about inflation not being high, is prices in the Gambia are very high, particularly of food commodities. And now, the way to address this obviously is not to go and just say, sellers, you cannot sell above a certain price. That would, that would be like attacking the symptom while forgetting the source. We have to ask ourselves, what is the source of this persistent high inflation in the Gambia? And the source of that is directly connected to your first question, which is, why is the dollar losing its value against all dollars? The reason for that is the Gambia imports everything. We export very little. And when you import a lot of things and you don't export, your currency always depreciates. Now, if your currency depreciates and you are importing everything, it means if you only needed $1,000 to import a bag of rice, if your dollar falls against the dollar, because the dollar is the currency of international trade, it means next time you want to buy the same bag of rice, even though the dollar price is still the same, you need more dollars to pay for it. So which means the price faced by every consumer in the Gambia must go up. So the falling dollar, our depreciating currency, is directly linked, is one of the driving factors for our high inflation rate here. Because, I recently made a post about these things. I sent an article about our Ministry of Industry announcing a big deal, a big agreement with Pakistan for the importation of rice.
Yeah.
This is something that should worry everyone. We have the land, we have the agroclimatic conditions here to grow rice, to be rice self-sufficient. Yet, 10 years after this government came to power, we are still importing 90% of the rice that we consume. So, what the government itself announced is a signal of failure, because the greater importation we have for something that we could produce, it means more import, less export. It means more depreciation of the currency. It means higher prices. So the price of vegetable oil, the price of rice, of every consumer good, things that we could produce locally, if we choose to import it, we are forever going to depreciate our currency, which will increase the prices faced by consumers, which means we have more inflation. So the way to address this problem is to look at the economy and say, what are the things that we are importing that we should produce locally? Because if you produce locally, then your import bill goes down, your currency starts to appreciate. It also at the same time creates economic opportunities, employment. You diversify your economy. So you create employment, you diversify your economy, you transform it. At the same time, you may in fact even export, and your currency will stop falling. And because you are no longer importing as much and your currency is no longer falling as much, prices will stabilize. This is the way it should be approached, not through price control. But what people are feeling is very real. Prices are going out of control. And the way to control prices is not just go and tell wholesalers and retailers, cap your price, but to look at what's causing it and address it at the root causes. So that's the kind of price control the government needs to do, and that is the kind of economic mismanagement they have completely failed at over the past 10 years.
If you are just joining us, this is Focus on Gambia. Our guest today is Mr. Ousman Gajigo. Mr. Gajigo was on the verge of setting up a political party. He went far. He did a lot of job with the country. He met a lot of women group, communities. He's well known in the Gambia, back due to Kwena to Fatutu. He's all over the country. Mr. Gajigo later on joined GAF. He's one of the GFA is one of the executive members. Mr. Gajigo, I just want for us to get into the ongoing coalition talk. Although it's not a collapse, their party stay in it. What went wrong? UDP and the other party walked away. What really went wrong?
Well, the coalition talk has been ongoing for a while. Even though things seemingly have collapsed, we do have to give credit to all the people who actually participated, because this discussion started since last year. So, including UDP, they have been active participants in it. Of course, UDP has publicly, they have been consistent in what their position is in terms of having party-led. But since they were at the table, they were negotiating, and everyone around the table, we assume they were negotiating in good faith. It was a discussion that was productive at some level. But as you said, you have to face the reality. It has more or less collapsed, though it's not officially collapsed. But one thing I like to point out, and I don't think that this is well known to many people, even right now, there isn't one single coalition talk. When people talk about coalition talk, they assume there is one single one. There isn't. There are parallel, multiple different coalition talks ongoing simultaneously. There is one called Apex, one called PAC, one called CMC, and there are yet others. And UDP has pulled out of one. I don't know whether they have officially pulled out of all of them. But the fact being, if you pull out of one, chances are you will pull out of the other ones. At this stage now, it's pretty much clear there isn't going to be one single unified opposition. That pretty much is set. If we are lucky, we might end up with two groups in the opposition. So personally, I'm a member of GFA, as you said, Gambia for All. GFA right now, as we speak, is in the process of internally now coming up with its own position for how it's going to approach the election. because it's been active in the coalition discussion. It's aware of the political terrain, what's happening there. So we have to adapt and react to what's happening, and also not just react to what's happening today, but plan for what might happen between now and the election. So we are in the process of determining what our next steps are going to be, whether we will be going our own way, whether we look for one political party that's out there and join forces with them, or whether just persist in the coalition talk with the remaining parties. This decision we will be making over the course of the next couple of weeks, and in due course we will inform the public once the relevant process in the party runs its course. But this is something that will be done very quickly.
Look at this, what the UDP is saying. They say an individual resign from your political party, you become an independent candidate, that's what brought to power. And it didn't work, and it didn't even go far, everything scattered. So they are having the belief that a party led is the way forward. What is your take on this?
I mean, of course, I disagree. I cannot. If you look at 2016, when we say the coalition has failed, we have to be a bit more specific what we mean. The coalition partly succeeded and partly failed. It partly succeeded in the sense that it brought parties together and they were able to contest in the election and win. And actually, truth be told, I think for many of them at the time, that was really the goal. In many of these coalition discussions, of course, we talk about the day after election, but not everybody seriously really reflect on that. If you look at what has happened in the 2016 and the collapse of that coalition government, there is nothing that led to that collapse that could not have happened even if you had a party led. You could still have the head of the party still kick out other members from that government. In fact, there is less constraint on a party-led coalition. There's less constraint on that party than on an individual. The reason, the argument behind having an individual leading a coalition is that you get to treat all the parties equally. But if the presidential candidate is from a particular party, you can see how there's in fact greater risk of one party being favored over the others. So to me, I'm not sure it's entirely accurate.
Okay, let me put this to you.
Yes.
Gambia for all.
Yes.
Be in the position where UDP is.
Yes.
Get the support, grassroots support, and they have we call them the biggest party.
Yes.
And you go into a coalition, talk with movement and organize people who are even, like you said earlier, they are there, they are even call for one rally.
Yes.
Will you agree, Gambia for all, will you agree for those people to lead you?
That's a very good point. And we have to be honest. So most parties, if you are in the position of UDP, historically you are the largest political party. You have, in the last election, you came out second in terms of vote. You would obviously want to lead, and it's natural. And I don't think, if we are all honest with ourselves, if any party is in UDP's position, you are going to insist on the position that UDP is insisting on. So in other words, is the position, can somebody understand why UDP is insisting on such a position? Absolutely. At the same time, we have to realize also that in the last election, the combined vote of the opposition was still less than 50%. So it's, no matter how big you are, it still would be helpful to have other parties come together and combine forces. Now, that process requires some give and take. Even if you, but the reality is the following: even if you have an independent, an individual-led coalition, you still have to reflect on the fact that parties are not of equal sizes. that a party like UDP that is significantly bigger would have to have, be given a certain weight relative to some movement that hasn't even, never contested in an election or hasn't even held a meeting. You cannot, put a small movement and UDP on equal footing. So that's the reality. The difficulty is how to strike the right balance. Appreciating UDP size, at the same time, trying to make sure you create as broad-based a group as possible.
Yeah. Okay, what is your take on this? Let me get this one clear. And from your own viewpoint, I think people are saying the problem is not the party. They want to work with the party. But the problem is Ousman Dabo's face has been on the ballot box for years, from 1996 up to this. I think, what is your take on that? The problem is Dabo, not Ousman. But if Dabo is out, everybody are going to join the UDP. Do you have you aware of that?
No, you hear people say that, obviously. I would say in the coalition talks, that didn't come up because every political party or movement would have its preferred candidate. Now, the choice of who will be the UDP candidate, that one is a decision of UDP, and they've made that choice. The rest of us have to live with it. But you are right. I mean, I'm not blind to the fact that there are many people in the opposition who are just not comfortable with Ousman Dabo running. But at the end of the day, the key thing is what we want is a change in this administration. Now, I have my preferred candidate. Obviously, given that I started a party, I believe that I should be the candidate over UDP. That's my opinion. I don't expect UDP or other parties to agree with me. The fact of the matter is, I do believe that whether it's at the ballot or during the coalition, things have to be negotiated. And you're absolutely right. This sentiment is there. There are some people who completely can't stand a Dabo candidacy. I'm not one of them, though he's not my top candidate, but I did vote for Ousman Dabo in the last election. But I do believe that in this election, we need to have a different candidate.
If your party is invited for a good negotiation, because some of the negotiation that failed in the 2016, there was no proper documentation. There was no power sharing. That if we win, you will be the Minister of Finance, you will be the Minister of Foreign Affairs, you will parastatal, you will be responsible for Gambia, you will be responsible for GPA, GRA. That was not done. If you are invited around the table, because like you have a goal, you need a change. What would be your position if you are invited for a negotiation?
I think any negotiation that is centered on the sharing of particular positions, I don't have a lot of confidence that the resulting government will be very effective. Because if you now start allocating all these key, very critical ministerial posts or positions on government based on political affiliation or to be allocated to politicians, you basically are going to you're just going to end up with a government that just where people are just sitting down to pick up their rewards. So I personally do not want to be part of any coalition negotiations where people are going to be promised positions. What I would be comfortable with in a coalition negotiation would be where the resulting government would be focused on certain policy priorities. For instance, let me be more specific. What I would be comfortable with is like a government that wants to come and say, are you willing, capable, and prepared to prioritize, agriculture, giving it the importance it needs, make sure we achieve right self-sufficiency within one single term, so that the inflationary pressures we are getting will be controlled, so that the out of control depreciation of the dollar will be arrested. Those are some of that's what I would prefer, rather than saying, oh, I'm Ousman Gajigo, I'm representing this party. If you want me to support your candidacy, I want to be Minister of Finance or Agriculture. I personally will not request any single position as a condition to join any coalition. But I will, if it's a government that I I'm prepared to support. I'll support them on the basis of policy priorities, their reform agenda, rather than the promise of any individual position. I think that would be a mistake if we build a coalition based on that.
If this is Focus on Gambia, if you are just joining us, our guest in the studio today is Dr. Ousman Gajigo. He's just taking us through on some of the important things in this country. Doctor, this is one of the big questions I always like to ask, but as you are in the studio today, I want for you to just throw light on this. Education is one. We are from the big Muslim background, so if you get to speak on certain things, you speak with respect. But I see a lot of political parties, our opposition in this country, nobody is selling their manifesto to the voters. They are just attacking Dr. Gajigo, this person. How can you spend your time talking about people you can't tell of what you will do for the youth, what you will do for the agriculture sector, what you will do for the fishing industry, and you are just talking about people in politics. Everybody go on all the media. I don't want to name them, but they are just attacking. This. Do you think that is very conducive environment for politics?
No, absolutely not. I mean, listen. I believe a serious political party, if you are requesting from the people the privilege to actually lead, you need to come with an agenda to say how you are going to move the country forward. And your manifesto is essentially your document, your promise in print form, telling people, if given the privilege to be in the State House, this is the agenda we will implement, and this is how we will move the country from period A to period B. So the manifesto and the agenda you have is very important. If you don't mind, I'd like to use this opportunity to actually point out that GFA's manifesto will be launched on 8 August at Paradise Hotel. So that's an event. You'll get your invitation just like other media. What the country doesn't need, but I know sometimes this generates a lot of views, because if you in this day social media is any sort of technology is a two-edged sword. It can be used for good, it can be used for something negative. In this day and age, if you want to generate a lot of views, whether it's on Facebook or TikTok, just say something controversial, insult somebody, belittle them. Politicians, respectable politicians, responsible citizens should try to resist such a temptation. We should base our discourse on issues. I would rather talk about how Adama Barrow has failed the Gambia in terms of not developing agriculture, how that has resulted in depreciating currency, how that has resulted in high inflation rate, how that has increased the cost of living. Not only in talking about those problems, but I can talk about how the problem can be addressed. I think in that sort of discourse, you improve the quality of the political the whole political discourse. You improve the quality. So I'm totally with you in that. I don't think it's productive at all engaging in insulting talk on productive exchanges. It might generate a view, a few thousand views in a day or two, and you can hit your social media targets. But we have to do these things by looking at the impact long term on the country as a whole. If you are talking to your son or your daughter about how they need to behave in front of adults, you need to also think about how you behave in front of the people. Yeah. If you are a politician who is asking for the privilege to lead the country, demonstrate that by pointing out what the current government is doing wrong, but demonstrate that are based on substantive discussion rather than just insulting. If I just stand there and all I talk about is Adam Barrow has a big belly, as opposed to Adam Barrow, in the energy sector, he didn't invest in production before expanding rural electrification. There's a big difference between the two. Yeah, so I hope that most politicians would listen to this concern that you've raised and act accordingly.
Actually, this is part of politics. Mama Kande was in 2016, when Gambia decided that Gambia should go, he refused to join the serving political party and the independent lady who defeated Gambia, that Gambia won. He went and stood alone and took his thing alone. There goes in this country now, we see a big political debate. Politicians are trying to come together. Everybody has said that, you know, the government is not doing where the government should go. Some say they don't want for the government to go for the third time. The time should stop at the second. You know, the 2-time limit should be a Gambia standard. We should adopt international standard like other West African countries the whole world is doing. And that talk was just going on, and he just walked out. Whether he was part of his representatives were there, who knows? But the talk was very hot at the final stage when UDP was going, and he just walked out. He went and joined the ruling party. So do you think really we will have an opposition force that can defeat Barukan December 5th?
No, absolutely. I think the opposition still has a chance because opposition is more than Mama Kande. Most of the opposition, I'm glad to see, are still in opposition. Mama Kande, unfortunately, is the latest manifestation of a very bad trend that we have in this country. Politicians without principles. Politicians who will say one thing today and tomorrow another. If you listen to the past 10 years or more, you know, what all the things that Mama Kande has been saying, and to see him all of a sudden switch like that, is very disappointing. It shows that the problem is not just Adama Barrow. Adama Barrow is a product of the environment, rather than, you know, Mama Kande is just the latest manifestation of trend that we've seen with Dr. Ismaila Ceesay, Mamadou Sabally, Sidi Ndiaye. People who will say one thing today and completely, say the complete opposite. So my advice to Gambian electorate is listen very carefully for integrity, you know, signs of integrity and consistency. One thing that is an unmistakable sign for absence of integrity is a politician who says one thing today, tomorrow they go and do something completely opposite. We're not talking about decades here, within a space of few years. You know, what Mama Kande was saying yesterday and what transpired 2 days ago. It is completely, it's so abrupt that it's almost mentally dizzy. So, but again, it is a general problem we have. And Mama Kande will not be the last politician you see doing something like this. But that shouldn't make us lose hope in all politicians. There are still some politicians, I believe, who can be counted upon to bring change. I certainly, I'm not a typical politician. I only entered politics recently. I don't expect to be in politics for a long time, but I'll be looking very carefully, who I would like to associate with, because the reason I entered politics is not for some personal position or a vehicle or some money that Barrow might give me in State House, but what change we can bring to the country. And if I see any indication that a politician is just there for themselves, there is no reason I'll continue any association with them. But what we can do as Gambian electorates is just scrutinize politicians. Do not just listen to what politicians say. It's very easy to talk. Scrutinize their track record. Nobody enters politics as a child. They are already adults that have lived for decades. So it's always possible to find out what they were doing 20 years ago. So we need to take our time and scrutinize politicians, their track record. Because track record is very difficult to falsify. What you, your track record is just reality. What you say in front of a crowd is easy to just say what a crowd wants to hear today. And if you look at all these politicians that made the switch recently, despite saying something completely different in the past, the likes of Mamadou Sabally, Ismaila Ceesay, Sidi Ndiaye, Mama Kande recently, if you really go and look at their track record, some of these things will not be very surprising.
One of the growing problems Gambia has been battling with from independent to where we are is youth unemployment. It has caused a lot of damage. Most Gambian youth has been buried in the sea. Some we don't know where they are. Parents are still waiting to know that yes, my daughter has arrived or my son has arrived. So I just want to ask a simple question: if Gambia for All is elected as the president of the 2026 December 5th election, you take over power. Where are you starting from with that problem? Because that's one of the burning problems in this country.
Or more realistically, if Gambia for All is part of any coalition government that comes in, what are we going to start from? I think for me, if any government that comes into power and you don't address their youth unemployment, you are not going to succeed. Because youth employment or economic opportunities for youth is intricately linked with any sort of anything that's positive in the economy. If you do what is needed in the energy sector, if you do what is needed in transport sector, if you do what is needed in agriculture, if you do what is needed in education, in all other sectors, health, what have you, you will have a positive impact on health. I mean, on youth employment. Let me give an example. We spoke a little bit about imports and agriculture. As I pointed out before, we import a lot of things we can grow locally. If you decide to be self-sufficient in agriculture, which means that we have to grow all the rice that we consume. Agriculture is labor intensive. I'm in agriculture. I've been in agriculture for many years. In my own farm, most of the workers are youth. In any agricultural enterprise, modern agricultural enterprise, most of the employees will be youth. The tractor drivers, all other things. And when we talk about agricultural work today, in this day and age, it's not people bending down with a hoe. There are a lot of modern implements. The processing, the land development, again, is labor intensive. Who are going to be the bulk of the employees there? Youth. When the rice is harvested, it needs to be processed. Who are going to be the bulk of the employees there? Youth. The byproducts of those rice that can be used into other sectors, whether animal feed, animal husbandry, or other sort of manufacturing process, who are going to be the bulk of that employees? Youth. So as you address one fundamental problem, let's say food security, you will simultaneously be creating opportunities in terms of employment in other sectors for youth. The youth problem right now, in fact, when we talk, if you look at the GBO statistics, the unemployment number is actually meaningless in the Gambia, because Gambia, one of the biggest sectors, agriculture, which is seasonal. Unemployment doesn't really capture it. The indicator that captures the problem of youth, lack of opportunities for youth in the Gambia is what's called NEET, not in education, not in employment and training. That number in the Gambia is far, far higher than Senegal, is far higher than neighboring countries. Significant. So it means youth that are not receiving any education, not receiving any training, and not in employment. Because when we say youth, we're talking about essentially from 18 to 35. Within that range, you have people who are still supposed to be in school. Some who are finished high school, but they should get vocational training. Some who are in their 30s, at this point, they should be fully in the labor market. So which is why when we're talking about youth, you don't use unemployment, you talk about NEET or NEET, not in education, employment and training. And this problem is very high in the Gambia. But going back to the main point, a government that doesn't appreciate that problem and therefore make so it is central to its economic reforms is a government that is certain to fail. And any government that GFA is in, this is something that we are going to prioritize. And our manifesto, which we will be launching on 8th of August, this is highlighted there. Yeah. So we will, to be more specific, by prioritizing things like, food security, economic transformation, human capital development, and system transformation in the country. These are our 4 pillars. By prioritizing this, you can already tell from the first 2 that providing economic opportunities for youth is central to that.
Finally, Mr. Gajigo, how do you cope with politics, agriculture, consultancies? Because how do you cope? How do you work all these things out?
Well, you just try to manage. These days, I don't do almost any consultancies this year. Once I started focusing on politics, so it's mainly my farm. I do have a non-profit foundation that help this horticultural garden and politics. It's not easy, but you basically try to, make things work. What makes things really possible is knowing that what you are working for is something that's worthwhile. It is a larger goal. It's not based on you looking for a position in government. Yeah, it's not some short-term goal. My activities that I've been doing before I decided to enter politics, those are things I'll continue doing even after I leave politics. And in fact, they are connected with why I entered politics, which is why when I'm talking about certain things like agriculture, I talk about those not from the point of view of a politician who has never stepped foot in a farm or from a purely academic exercise. No, I have my own farm. I have a non-profit foundation that is focused on agriculture, that has activities across all regions of the country, but I've also studied agriculture as an academic field. So I've also worked in international organizations that have funded agricultural programs, not only in the Gambia, but in other parts of the world. So the understanding that I have in agriculture has informed very well the sort of concrete, feasible, and implementable development plans that are reflected in the GFA's manifesto that I believe any government, whether GFA is part of it or not, if you deviate from that, you're not going to address, because Gambia is a small country. The problems are well known. If you look at the situation, there, you can, all roads will eventually lead to the same solution. Yeah. So, if you bring somebody competent and ask them what are the things that should be done to address Gambian agriculture, you bring 5 different competent people, I guarantee you they all converge on the same set of solutions. Yeah, but we do what we can, and it's not easy. But when you are motivated by something higher rather than just immediate personal or selfish ambitions, even when you feel tired, you somehow find some energy to tap into and get you going.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, sir. We can release you now. You are a busy man.